It is 2:15. Welcome everyone to the third session of today's, I'm going to say semi-annual Laredo and Webb County area Metropolitan Planning Organization training. For this third session, it is an overview of multimodal transportation planning. We're going to talk about bicycle and pedestrian opportunities, about transit, and about freight and shipping issues in Laredo and Webb County. And again, this is an audio presentation. It's going to be recorded if you're not able to watch this or other sessions. All these sessions are being recorded so that you can watch later. Now, I've muted everybody. I'll actively mute just to try to keep the audio quality great for the recording and for everybody listening in. But don't let that stop you. If you got something to say, feel free to unmute and just mute yourself afterwards to preserve the audio quality. But Kirk, how would you like to do this? Would you like questions reserved at the end, or do you want people to jump in? What's your preferred method?
We've got a pretty good sized crowd, but I think we can have questions on the fly. I mean, I don't mind being having a question posed every now and again.
Got it. Well, you heard it, folks. If you want to jump in and provide a comment or question, Kirk's okay with that. And I want to thank everybody for their time participating in this training. And I especially want to thank TTI and Kirk from the Federal Highway Administration for taking the time to do this training for us. This is something we've been talking about with Kirk and with the Federal Highway Administration to provide trainings just like this so that not just the MPO staff, but also city and county staff and elected officials in the city and county understand the process, because the better we understand it, it's the better we can utilize the funding, the opportunities that are there. So with that, Kirk, thank you for your time, and I will pass it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kirk Falver, and I'm with the Federal Highway Administration, as Kirby mentioned. I've been with Federal Highways for about 32 years, and in June I'll have my 33 years anniversary coming up in June. But pleased that y'all stayed on long enough to hear my presentation. I appreciate your participation today and have enjoyed the discussion and interaction that you've had with Bill throughout this morning. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about multimodal transportation planning, and that includes transit, rail, bicycle, pedestrian, and freight movements. And if y'all have any questions, feel free to break in at any time and slow me down a little bit, but I usually talk real fast, and if you want me to slow down, just let me know. Go ahead, next slide. Please, Matt. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about intermodal freight planning. Of course, that's a very important topic for your region, your I-35 NAFTA corridor and international border crossing with one of the largest ports of entry coming in to the United States from Mexico, I think, in the country. So next slide. So what role does freight movement have in transportation systems, particularly in the Laredo area? Well, freight's a very important element. It's part of our planning factors that we look at in the FAST Act metropolitan planning regs and statewide planning regs. In fact, we have a national freight network that we've established under the FAST Act, and the freight program is centered around that freight network that we've established on the NHS and interstate. But industry, retail, agriculture, the movement of goods throughout the region is a very critical part of the economy and the economy of the United States, Texas being the 10th largest economy in the world. And we're all affected by freight movements and issues. Bridge replacements, road widenings, port and rail access are important aspects of the intermodal planning process. And since ICE-T, we've been enhancing planning to not just look at roads and highways, but look at other modes, including freights and rail and air. So truck parking is also another issue. We're going to try to bring a truck parking workshop to Laredo in the next year, maybe early part of 2021. And so if you guys are interested in learning more about truck parking and how that can be applied within your region, we're going to have the Resource Center come out and do some training on truck parking for y'all in the next, probably in the next 3 to 4 months. Next slide. This is kind of a busy slide, but basically it talks about the roles and responsibilities of the MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, and state DOTs, TxDOT, having the freight transportation planning process. And it includes, like everything from data collection to corridor plans to modeling of freight, the freight analysis framework and statewide analysis models that we have here in Texas. It involves the development of freight advisory committees, which I know you guys are working on to form with your new staff members, and the identification of bottlenecks and funding priorities for the region. Next slide. Matt, next slide, please. What funding is available for freight planning and project implementation? As I mentioned earlier, is the National Highway Freight Formula Program, known as the NHFP. The NHFP is focused on improving movements of freight within the National Highway Network. We can use up to 10% of the National Highway Freight Program monies for each fiscal year to fund private rail, public or private rail, water facilities, including ports, and intermodal facilities, including inland ports. And we have a state-approved freight plan within the state of Texas, so we can obligate the NHFP funds as of December 4th, 2017. The discretionary part of the FAST Act has a competitive program, a grant program, and this is basically the Build Grant Program, the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America grant program, and that's still going on to this day. It's available for competitive discretionary grants that you want to apply for. You may want to look at that as a source of funding. Also, the PL funds that you guys get, a portion to you each year, can be used for freight planning, intermodal planning, transit planning, for example, and they're eligible for that type of funding source. Access to ports and terminals as part of the Federal Transportation Improvement Program are also intermodal facilities. We fund under the National Highway Systems, NHPP funds can be used for the intermodal connections and the planning for those intermodal connections. And those are an important part of the planning process as well. Next slide. What are some freight tactics or freight methodologies that we can look at in terms of improving freight, effective movement of freight goods? We can look at truck ordinances, peak period bans, freight design, looking at freight within the design and construction of your interstates, and improve entry and exit ramps. We talked about access control as part of the I-69 project coming through Laredo. Road pricing charges, peak period tolls, truck parking, incident management. Your ITS program can look at automated detection and surveillance and communications to your closed circuit TV system that you have with your Stratus program. Information management improvements such as highway advisory radio and traffic information can provide users with alternate detours. We talked about I-10 in Beaumont being underwater for 2 weeks. Well, we can have a similar bridge strike or a collapse of a structure, and that would require rerouting of trucks and freight around maybe off I-35, and hopefully not on local streets, but maybe parallel frontage roads and things like that to get people around the incident or accident and to move the freight more quickly through the region. Next slide.
Can I jump in, Kirk?
Yeah. Sure.
You got a lot of interesting stuff on this slide. Just one thing that I'm curious about. To what extent does the state or federal government, I don't know if you know this, but do they discourage cities from determining truck routes or
There's actually a national truck network that's been established, and that's been around for years. And there's a map on the TxDOT TPMP website. It shows the National Truck Network, and that National Truck Network is modified through the state DOT.
well, I guess here's the question, and maybe you might know this or might not. The cities I've seen have said this, trucks aren't allowed down this road, but can that actually be enforced? Is that something, do cities have that kind of discretion to say a truck cannot be on a public road because we determined we don't want truck traffic down this road? Is that, do you have any?
I know through like city and county local ordinances and laws that they can ban trucks from going through neighborhoods and local streets, except for delivery purposes and things of that nature. But the through traffic is basically on that national truck network that I mentioned earlier, that we have approved a map. And on that map, the truck size and weight provisions, the oversized, overweight trucks can use those routes, and it kind of dictates to them which routes they can take through Laredo. But I can provide you a map of that. I don't know if you'd be interested in showing it to your locals. That National Truck Network map would probably be your best source of information on where trucks are coming and going in the Laredo region. But also, to modify that National Truck Network map takes going through the federal aid program guidance, and I can send you the provisions for that on how to modify it to adjust in case the city or county wants to adjust the map. But mostly it's on the state, interstate, or national highway system that the trucks are allowed to travel on, except for local deliveries and things like that. So hopefully I answered your question somewhat, but if not, we can talk offline more. Next slide. So for additional freight planning resources and information, there's a whole website that Office of Freight Management and Operations from headquarters in Washington, D.C. has maintained. And there's also freight financing improvements, policies, and how to find finance tools or mechanisms to get funding. And there's also a Talking Freight seminar, a webinar that they hold monthly on different topics, including truck parking and oversized heavy vehicle use tax and other types of topics that may be of interest to you all. But if you want me to send you those, I get announcements every month on the Talking Freight, and you can sign up for them yourself. Just going to that website to find out more information on that monthly Talk Freight webinar. But any questions on freight? I know freight's a very important topic, and Bill kind of highlighted some of it during his talk this morning. But do you have any questions on this portion? If I hear no questions, then I'm going to move into a different mode. Okay. Let's move on so we can make best use of our time. Next slide. Okay, bicycle and pedestrian planning, another important mode of discussion. I know you guys have an active transportation working group as part of your technical advisory committee that helps serve to provide bicycle and pedestrian needs and maps and master plan type activities that you're going to do to highlight the need for better sidewalks, better and protected bicycle paths and thoroughfares within your region. So next slide.
To interject, we are in the process of finishing the Laredo and Webb County area active transportation plan has been produced by MPO staff. We're going to present that to city, county, and the MPO. Now, one of the recommendations coming out of that plan is to form a committee like the technical committee, called the Active Transportation Committee, that will specifically deal with pedestrian, bicycle, transit recommendations that will then go to the policy committee for action. And one of the things we're really hoping is getting a lot more attention on the list of projects for the MTP and the TIP that are, if not, there's an element that's active transportation, we're always including that, or just projects that are sole active transportation that are being recommended to the policy committee. So we're hoping that
Well, that's
being
great.
focused on that will lead to more projects that are active transportation based.
That's a great movement, because I don't think in previous years we've seen that activity in the Laredo region before. So that's like the first time ever I've seen that type of initiative in that region. So in your region, so my commendations go to you
Well, it's
for
a
being
team
yeah
effort, and it's also the policy
yeah
committee who's wanted to go this direction. So they get
that's great.
credit.
It's good news. Safety is another thing we'll talk about, and how to improve safety along these bicycle thoroughfares is another key issue that we need to address. Next slide. This is kind of busy too, but basically the FAST Act requires that we look at integrated facilities, including accessible bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And as part of the annual planning listing that you guys do at the end of the year, we request that bicycle and pedestrians be highlighted within that annual performance or annual project listing, the APL, including investments in pedestrian walkways and bicycle. And we do that for a reason. There's a lot of interest in this area from the public, and they need to know, where the projects are being built, when they're going to be open to traffic to travel on, and this helps provide the public with some idea of how much investments are going on within the region. Next slide. There's a Metropolitan Pedestrian and Bicycle Planning Handbook I wanted to mention that are available to the MPOs. If you'd like a copy, just let me know. I've got a copy, electronic copy, and it provides examples from throughout the country, 11 MPOs. And it covers how you can better integrate bicycle and pedestrian planning into the metropolitan planning process, the 3C planning process that Bill mentioned earlier. And it's a very important tool and handbook that based on years of research and experience in this area, and I'd be happy to share that with you if you're interested. Next slide. And in the Metropolitan Pedestrian and Bicycle Handbook, it talks about how to engage the public, so your public involvement, public participation process, how they can have a voice at the table, analyzing walking and bicycle conditions and needs, talks about data collection, planning, designing inventories, mapping out your inventories of sidewalks in GIS, and crash maps that show, your high accident locations so that you can better plan and prepare for improvements and kind of prioritize those improvements within your tip and within your plan. Forecasting tools, priorities. We talk about visioning, how to use goals, objectives, tasks, and identify these in your plan, your work program, and then carry them forward to implementation as part of your planning and project development process in conjunction with TxDOT, the TxDOT Laredo District and TPMP. There's also a bicycle pedestrian coordinator at the statewide level. Her name is Bonnie Sherman, and she's an excellent point of contact for additional information that I'll be sharing with you towards the end of this presentation. And Bonnie is the lead bicycle pedestrian coordinator for the whole state, but she's willing to help and provide you with some technical expertise, and her knowledge and skills are fantastic. I'd recommend that you contact her and get on her mailing list for all of her work and studies that are going on in the world of bicycle pedestrian planning. Next slide. And this just talks about the bicycle pedestrian handbook that we put out. Federal Highways is published. It talks about key funding decisions, how to identify funding, what is eligible, what is not eligible under the federal aid highway program, keys to success, how to go beyond the minimum requirements so that you can really take it up to the next level, which I know that you're trying to do in the region. And sorry, my dog is barking, but I've got 3 of them, so you might hear Charlie. That's Charlie in the background, but I apologize. Many of these activities are something that you can plan for in your work program, and identify these projects in your plan and tip, so that we can enhance your goals, your vision for bicycle pedestrian planning for your area, and elevate it to a higher priority depending on your needs and the public's needs within the region. Next slide. Wow, this is really hard to read. I think Bill was right. I put too much information on my slides, but normally I have 2 or 3 bullets, and this is a lot of information, but it basically says we need to engage the community, and this is how you engage the community on bicycle pedestrian planning based on the handbook. And you guys are already making steps towards that direction, so I don't need to go through all these how to do it, because you guys are already doing it in your region. So next slide. Developing a regional pedestrian and bicycle planning process includes, like I mentioned earlier, building an inventory, perhaps putting it on GIS maps, layers, so you can overlay that with your street maps to find out where the breakpoints are, or where the termini are that you need to kind of fill the gaps in for. Engaging the bicycle pedestrian community, trying to address the goals within your plan, and focusing on identifying system deficiencies is another key part of the bicycle pedestrian planning process. And to fully integrate all these non-motorized needs and improving safety is a high priority within most urban areas, if not all, because we're seeing a lot more pedestrian and bicycle accidents in some areas, and it's like a spike. It's because more people during COVID are riding bikes and walking more than ever. And we need to do things like the rail crossings through Operation Lifesaver to educate the public and to go out and perhaps save a few lives along the way. So our education and outreach process. So if you want to find out more about Operation Lifesaver and those types of things, I've got buku information on that. So just ask me and I can send it to you. Next slide. Tying objectives for bicycle and pedestrians in the regional goals of the MTP, there's many benefits, including making sure the goals and objectives for bicycle and pedestrian are in your plan, and that there's measurable performance measures and objectives that Bill talked about as part of the performance-based planning and programming that you can build in there, going beyond the bare minimum and identifying those goals and objectives and tactics in your long-range plan, in your bicycle pedestrian, perhaps chapter in your long-range plan, and looking at project selection and prioritization processes that apply points to these types of programs so they can be prioritized and compete with highway and other transit programs and projects that are being proposed in your region. And that's the way that, Bill used the term leverage. If you want to leverage your funds, this is an opportunity to do so. Next slide. Making field observations of pedestrian and bicycle activity includes data gathering, and it can be very expensive, but we have a few tools and state tools and programs that can help assist you in gathering this data. One tool is the Highway Performance Monitoring System. The HPMS can be used to look at activity data. The other types of performance reporting processes include, like what we talked about, pavement condition, which would affect bicycle use, number of lane widths, speed limits, terrain, structures, things like that would affect bicycle performance. State and local ADA transition plans can inform the planning process too, in order to create livable communities for people of all needs, including those that are special needs type of folks that have ADA issues. Crash data that can be used to identify those hotspots, both pedestrian and safety. And road safety audits are another way to get public information about which and concerns they have about safety, access, and comfort levels using these facilities. And those are solutions that we can program in your UPWP and look at education enforcement measures. And these audits can be then built into support for new bicycle pedestrian projects, to look at objective tools to help build your case that we need better transportation systems that would affect their modes. There's guidance on conducting these audits through the Office of Safety website, and for road safety audits, I suggest that you go to that website. You can click on that button there and it will take you to that website for more information. Next slide. MPO can fund conducting bicycle and pedestrian data collection activities through manual count, providing funding for additional staff and volunteers to provide data collection efforts at more frequent intervals. Automated counting equipment can be used and be paid for with PL funds. That equipment can be used to identify how many people are using the facility, and collecting that data is important because then you can find out the volumes and the use based on that data collection, which is objective, and find out which, the trends, the safety issues, and finalizing your prioritization of projects that you want to go from top to bottom, your top 100 locations, for example, for bicycle improvements and pedestrian improvements. Next slide. TxDOT and TTI have developed a bicycle and pedestrian count program, and you can click on that link to contact Bonnie Sherman and TTI folks if you want to use their equipment for loan. They have 8 pneumatic tubes for bicycle counts and 10 infrared counters to count the number of people on trails for mixed non-motorized traffic, including bicycle, pedestrian. And there's some resources there that you may not have known about, but the map that you can go to shows you where the 86 permanent count locations are and the 245 short duration counts are throughout Texas, including some in the southern portion of the state. I don't know about Laredo, but it looks like there's not a lot of information in terms of data collection, data gathering based on the equipment that's been installed so far. But who knows, in the future, there could be a possible branching out of this map, so there's more areas. Pedestrian counts are more widespread, including the Laredo region where you need it the most. Next slide. This is the statewide pedestrian and bicycle handbook. It's a different tool for state DOTs to look at bicycle and pedestrian projects and plans. Looking at it's a peer exchange with 9 state DOTs, and looking at documents from 15 states. It would help the state to look at noteworthy practices, best management practices, and experiences and knowledge gained from other states around the country, state DOTs, so that states like the state of Texas can plan for non-motorized planning and implementation efforts. Next slide. This is kind of a busy slide, but basically shows you all the funding opportunities from the build grants all the way to the STP block grants to what TASIS used to be called Transportation Alternatives Program, but now it's Transportation Alternatives Set Aside Program, TASIS, I think. And of course, we don't have CMAQ in the Valley, in the Laredo area, but there's other FTA funds, for example, that you can use. And there's a link to that spreadsheet with all the different project types that you can fund, all the different sources of funds at that link down below. You can click on that link and find out more information about funding sources. So even county equipment, for example, is listed there. And pedestrian transit-oriented development, including bus shelters and benches and things like that, they can be funded with federal aid, highway program funds. So that could be of interest to you as you're building up your active transportation committee. I just wanted to make you aware of these opportunities for funding. So if there's a will, there's a way. You just got to find the way, I guess. And this is a tool that you can use to find the funding source. Next slide. These are different types of websites that you can go to build planning capacity for active transportation. And there's websites on bicycle pedestrian. We have a bicycle pedestrian coordinator in headquarters level. And if you want to get a hold of them, there's contact people, there are folks that are really knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than I am about bicycle pedestrian planning that you can contact. Links are provided here onto their website to get more information and find out those contact people in Washington, D.C. area. And they're available to come out and do training and technical assistance, and they can provide workshops and peer exchanges and so forth, if you so desire. Next slide. Okay, we're ending our bicycle pedestrian discussion, but Kirby and y'all, did you have any questions on bicycle pedestrian planning activities and eligibility that we talked about? Did anyone on the line, our participants, have any questions before we move on to transit planning, which will be the final module in this session? I think we've got about 12 minutes left, so.
Well, we have
questions and answers. Go ahead.
25 minutes left.
Oh, 25 minutes left. Okay. Got plenty of time for questions and answers, so I'm here. I'm available. If you want to talk to me offline, my contact information will be provided to you, and just give me a call and I'll try to help you out. Any questions? Let's say we move on to transit planning, because I know Claudia is just anxious to talk about transit planning. She's on Metro. I see on Metro there. Why do you have your mask on? Is there too many people in your room, or are you afraid of one person in your room? That's safe. You're being safe, Claudia. Next slide. So transit plays a major role in every planning area, and every MPO should have transit at the table. The whole message that I'd like to send to y'all is that transit should have a place at the table. Since MAP 21 came out in 2012, 2013 timeframe, there's a requirement for all TMAs to have transit at the table, at the policy board table. And so around 2015 was the deadline for that, and you guys have met that by having transit at your policy board table. Next slide. Having transit at the table is very important because there's benefits of participation in strategies for achievements. They can influence the identification of projects, funding priorities, identify issues, including safety and security issues to the MPO policy board that need to be fixed. And they can be fixed by the MPO policy board or technical advisory committees. Next slide. Having transit at the table is also an important way to establish the image of transit as indispensable to the area, to the community. Promoting transit service as an alternative to driving alone is a way to reduce congestion, to improve air quality, reduce greenhouse gases emissions, and build a smart cities, smart growth type of approach to your region. And they can enhance the prospects of funding, raise visibility of transit service, and provide transit to those that are dependent on transit, those that have physical disabilities, who are blind or handicapped or whatnot. They depend on transit. Elderly, they depend on transit. They have to get around. They have to go to the hospital. They have to go to the community centers. They have to go shopping. They deserve a place at the table. They deserve a voice in your planning process. Next slide. Transit-friendly land use policies like transit-oriented development, for example, are essential to promote good transit planning. And what we're trying to do by transit-oriented development is provide livable communities so people can walk a quarter mile or less to their transit stop, get on the bus, take it downtown to work, take it back, and save on parking charges. And a lot of people are spending a lot of money on cars these days, automobiles, and gasoline being criteria, and also insurance. And you're spending 20% of your income on cars when you can take a transit and save money and promote your livability within the region by reducing the traffic and the amount of parking garages that are downtown. All you need to do is provide options like bus shelters, park and ride facilities, signage, sidewalks. We talked about bicycle pedestrian, but sidewalks are necessary. And transit right-of-way for like bus rapid transit that we have in Austin and Houston and Dallas and San Antonio. That bus rapid transit is a quicker way to move people in and out of the downtown area to their homes and to their destinations. Next slide. So get transit on the agenda. Make sure that they have an opportunity to speak at your MPO policy boards. Get them involved with air quality and policy decision making. Making sure that they have a place at the table ensures that their voice is heard, and they have ownership of a product that comes out of the planning process that the public can really use and benefit from. So, to accelerate delivery of projects, I'm monitoring these in your annual project listings. That gives you an idea of what you have accomplished and whether or not you're moving the needle in terms of that performance-based planning and programming that Bill alluded to earlier today. Next slide. So transit at the table is essential for strengthening your funding prospects, identifying full participation opportunities in the development of your plan, your MTP, your 2045 and future 2050 plan, and short-range transportation improvement program. You can secure funding from non-traditional sources. There's probably a chart or a spreadsheet somewhere that talks about the transit, just like we had bicycle pedestrian funding opportunities. I'm sure we can find a chart that identifies funding opportunities from FTA, from the Build Infra grants, and other sources, including, highway funds can be used for transit. Believe it or not, there's a flexibility there for both CMAQ and SCP and NHS to be flexed. And you can flex those highway funds to build transit improvements, buy buses, to purchase capital stock, to build bicycle shelters, transit shelters and bus shelters and benches and security like lights and things like that. That money is available. So we just need to know about it and kind of fight for that dollar. Next slide. This is a checklist that publication, Transit at the Table, I found was useful, going into your certification review. Are we really involving the transit elements in your planning process? Are you really involving them in the development of your long-range plan? Are you really involving them in the development of your transportation improvement program? Are you really involving them as a voice at the table? And do you provide their opportunities for them to review and comment on funding priorities and project selection? And do you feel that transit's getting a fair share? I don't know. Is transit really a player in your region? I know they are, because we've seen it as part of the certification review process that you've involved them. But making sure that they're aware of they can be certified. You guys are certified every 4 years, and we'll be looking at that. We'll be looking at that the next time we come around in 4 years, whether or not transit has been at the table and making an effective use of their resources that you have available to promote transits within your region. So I think that concludes my multimodal discussion. It's almost 3 o'clock. How much time do we have, Kirby?
Well, we can take as much time as you need, but we're scheduled for 1 hour, so that goes till 3:15. But if we have some questions, we can continue, or we can stop here.
Okay. Did anyone on the call today have a question regarding transit at the table? If you have any questions, I wish FTA was here. We could have brought FTA Region 6 on board and brought Don Kosky down, but I guess they weren't available today. But they're the resource guys. They're the funding people. Like, we're on the federal highway side funding highways. They're the transit folks funding transits, and transit is a part of the Highway Trust Fund. But who knows in the future, which if the administration changes, how that's going to change out, because the formulas will change with the next Congress, next administration. Did anyone have any questions on the transit portion? I've got one from Claudia. Funding for improvements are needed in several El Metro service areas for boarding and deboarding on required bus bays. So Claudia, did you want to unmute yourself and explain your question a little bit? Tell us what you're thinking.
Can you all listen?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, good afternoon. So the question, of course, is going to be related to funding. We have services along, I want to say, most all highways here in Laredo. Of course, 35, South 83, Zapata Highway. And we have a good deal of challenges and concerns because we do not have bus bays on most of these locations. So we have the bus literally blocking traffic, becoming a target for all those vehicles going at, I want to say, high speed, anything over 30. It's going to cause significant damage and unfortunately, casualties possibly. And we've been very lucky, not to say very blessed, that we have had not any fatality or anything related, but the issue that we do need those bus bays. We had several conversations and look at funding opportunities, but really nothing has transpired. Is there anything specific that we as transit agency, any funding source that we can pursue so we can start really making a good effort to build this bus base? And Zapata Highway is one of my biggest concerns. We're really boarding and deboarding passengers on the highways. on the street.
Yeah, there are funding opportunities. I wish FTA was here. I think what we can do is, Claudia, is set up a separate conference call with Don Koski, who's the director of like TP&P for Federal Transit Administration, and he can provide you with some guidance on which funding avenues to pursue. Because I'm not an expert on their funding programs, FTA funding programs. I'm a highway guy, but I can set up a FaceTime, or not a FaceTime, but a Microsoft Teams meeting with Don or Tony to get you some more information on which discretionary program funds are available to you that you can compete for. They probably have ideas of how other states within the region, they're a regional office, they're not a division office, but they have, Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, Arkansas. They have all these other states, and I'm sure they're all clamoring for these types of projects. So I'm wondering if that would be helpful to you to have us set up a separate conference call with FTA and discuss this problem with them directly. Would that be okay?
Yes, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, we'll do that within the next week or two.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments, issues? Feel free to bring.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Vanessa.
Hey, it's not a comment, a question, but I definitely would like a copy of the manual, the bike ped manual that you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation.
Sure, I can do that.
Thanks.
Kirk, you can either send that, or if you just Google the title of that, again, Kirk, what is it? It's the Bicycle and Pedestrian
Handbook.
FHWA. If you Google that, because I just checked it out, it's downloadable. It was last published in 2017. It's right there on their website. So
Yeah, if you click that,
we're going to send this presentation out to everybody, so they'll also. It looks like that's a link. Everybody can visit there.
yeah, if you scroll down, Matt, if you can scroll down a little bit, there's the handbook right there. So it's available on Adobe Acrobat. You can download it.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay. And I'm hoping that will provide you some useful information. If not, then we can always try to figure out, pick their brains and find a different handbook or different, training needs or whatever you have. I'm more than happy to try to set up a call with the headquarters guys, the bicycle pedestrian coordinator, to help you, resolve your issues or problems or provide you with some other best practices.
Any other questions for Kirk? Kirk, I want to thank you for taking time today. We really appreciate help from both TTI, the Federal Highway Administration, and TxDOT. We always consider it a team effort. I know Vanessa has in all the work she's done, and we continue to do so as we want to move the MPO forward. So we're going to have you back and continue to do trainings like this. So thank you for putting it together and preparing it and compiling this material that we'll make sure we send out to everybody. With that said,
We still have one more session.
Yes,
right?
we still have one more session. It is going to start at 3:30. So at 3:30, you can log back in. It's an overview of the MPO public involvement and Title VI environmental justice policies. So Kirk will be presenting that again. So we'll see everybody at 3:30. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Kirby.